Okay, we are in chapter 2 of the manipulated mind, and this is video number 3. The description here is based on that in Peter Watson's excellent book, War on the Mind. Number 1. The Chinese enforced trivial demands, such as the keeping of insignificant rules or forced writing, to accustom the prisoners to being compliant. Number 2. They took pains to show the prisoners that they were in total control of the latter's fate, pretended to take cooperation for granted, and tantalized them with possible favors. From this, prisoners learned the uselessness of trying to maintain any semblance of control themselves. They learned helplessness. Number 3. Occasionally, the Chinese would offer favors when they could least be predicted, rewarded any show of cooperation, promised better conditions, or demonstrated unexpected kindness, all of which served to give the men motivation to comply and to prevent them from adjusting to deprivation. 4. Threats of torture, death, no return home, isolation, interminable interrogation, or threats against family and friends served to deepen the men's fears, anxiety, and despair. 5. Degradation, such as the prevention of personal hygiene, humiliations, punishments, insults. Foul living conditions and no privacy had the effect of making continued resistance seem pointless and counterproductive. Forced to be concerned only with the most basic of values, it seemed that compliance would not but help raise self-esteem. Number 6. By forcing the men to be in darkness or bright light, in an unstimulating environment without the diversion of varied foods or books or freedom of movement, the Chinese could force the men to dwell on their captivity, with the resultant confusion arising from excessive introspection. Number 7. Complete or semi-physical isolation served the same ends, as well as depriving the victim of any social support other than that of his jailer, on whom he became increasingly dependent. Number 8. Physical pressures, such as semi-starvation, induced illness, sleep deprivation, prolonged periods of standing or interrogation, and constant tension, all worked on the men until they were mentally too weakened to resist. In an article published in The Manipulation of Human Behavior, edited by Biderman and Zimmer, Henkel explained why and how the physical stresses took their particular mental toll. The brain's internal milieu, he wrote, contains a number of organic and inorganic substances in solution. Disturbances in the levels of these can adversely affect the way the brain functions. Not only may the brain itself be directly affected by these fluctuations, but it may also be indirectly affected when fluctuations impair other vital organs. The kinds of common conditions which may cause disturbances include sweating, water deprivation, salt deficiency, excessive water or salt, vomiting, diarrhea, and burns. Some people, when extremely anxious, start breathing too rapidly, and this can cause chemical changes in the blood, which in turn can affect the brain. Because the brain can only use carbohydrates for energy, not fat and proteins as can other organs, it is very quickly affected by any drop in sugar levels in the blood, sometimes again caused by over-anxiety. A deficiency of B vitamins in the diet can directly affect the brain. Indirectly, the brain can be harmed by any malfunction of the lungs, liver, and heart, as the efficient working of the brain is dependent on the swift removal of all metabolic end products present in the fluid surrounding it. The brain syndrome, as it is termed, describes the progressive mental deterioration that occurs when the brain is seriously impaired. Initially, a patient is restless and over-talkative, then gradually he becomes delirious, confused, and finally loses consciousness. In the early stages, however, there is no obvious sign of brain damage. The patient manifests mainly emotionality, depression, irritability, jumpiness, or tension, all of which could be attributed to particular life circumstances. Speech deteriorates slightly, and he gets a little vague and forgetful, but the patient can still perform intellectually, if a little less efficiently than usual. Hinkle says, in this state, the subject may have no frank illusions, hallucinations, or delusions, but he overvalues small events, misinterprets, blames others, and accepts explanations and formulations which he might reject as patently absurd under different circumstances. He does not confabulate, but he may be willing to state that a report is clearly true, or that an event actually occurred, when in fact the report merely could be true, or the event might have occurred. His intellectual functions, his judgment, and his insight decline to a similar degree. Hinkle suggests that as the prisoners in Korea were all kept in bad conditions, they might well have suffered these initial stages of the brain syndrome. Also, as the brain needs information of various kinds to process and to keep it active, periods of isolation or the repetitive carrying out of only one mental activity as a work duty were likely to tire the brain and cause it to deteriorate, although, again, the effects would not be immediately obvious. Despite the fact that such physical tolls on the brain must affect its functioning, Hinkle points out that deterioration does not occur at the same rate in all people. He believes that the personality of the individual plays a strong part in determining who holds out longest. In short, the brain, the organ that deals with information, also organizes its responses on the basis of information previously fed into it. This information in the form of a personality developed through the experience of a lifetime, as well as immediate attitudes and the awareness of the immediate situation, conditions the way the brain will react to a given situation. There can be no doubt that personality, attitudes, and the perceptions of the immediate situation seriously influence the ability of a brain to endure the effects of isolation, fatiguing tasks, and loss of sleep. One more minute. Not only does personality affect when brain syndrome starts, it also affects the form that syndrome will take, determining whether a particular man will become talkative, withdrawn, anxious or angry, paranoid or trusting. And we'll stop it right there, and we will pick this up in the next video. We are in chapter 2. This was part 3, and we will pick up part 4 next video. See you there.